heard that the Bulbous family knew that she was alive, she would be prepared. So he decided to lock Felix up so that couldn't happen. Aster, you can't do that to Felix. If you lock him up, I'll immediately go to see the head of the Ansera, Bodhi threatened. Aster huffed in anger. However, after being threatened by Bodhi, he hesitated to do what he just said. Bodhi, we're brothers. I've been treating you very well these years. Are you willing to see me in trouble? Aster inquired. Or have you always secretly wanted to replace me? He was implying that Bodhi wanted to be the new patriarch of the Bulbous family. Aster, I have never had that ambition. I also don't want to be involved in your matter with Ava. But you can't deprive my son of his freedom, insisted Bodhi. But your son kept it a secret that Ava is alive. He's disloyal to the Bulbous family, argued Aster. Why am I disloyal to the Bulbous family? Just because I kept it a secret that Ava survived? No one made sure she was really dead. You all just assumed. Felix continued to mock them. Why would you assume she was dead if you weren't the one that caused her death? Aster turned bright red with fury. Felix was forcing him to confess that he had tried to kill Ava. However, would he admit it? Absolutely not. Eventually, he hissed. Fine, Felix can be released, but he must stay in the world of immortals. Bodhi, since you made it clear that you're unwilling to be involved in this, please tell your son to behave himself. If he dares to damage the Bulbous family's reputation, don't blame me for punishing him. Aster could do nothing to Felix, so he could only put pressure on Bodhi. He only hoped that Bodhi would keep it among them. Fine, Bodhi agreed. He wouldn't warn Ava because he clearly knew that she would be safe. After all, she had already reached a high level, and she also had Ezekiel's help. Felix had the same idea, so he didn't protest. He could stay in the world of immortals, where he could relax and focus on cultivation. It didn't matter whether Ava was aware that Aster already knew she was still alive. Even if they ran into each other, Aster was no match for Ava right now, because her level was much higher than his. In the end, Bodhi and the others didn't punish Aster for hurting Felix, because it wasn't a serious injury, and he would be fine in a few days. All right, it's dinner time, so let's go home and have a meal together, Bodhi said to Felix. Sure, what are we going to have? I'm starving. Is there red braised pork and salt-baked chicken? Asked Felix purposely, because he knew that Aster and the others were too furious to eat anything now. It was true that the others were in completely bad moods now, so they were extremely angry when Felix happily said that he was going to enjoy his meal. After Felix and his parents walked out of the yard, Aster directly turned around and went back into his study. The next second, he slammed the door behind him. He didn't want to eat at all. The others were also furious, but they were hungry, so they still went to eat, stewing in anger. Along the way, they kept cursing Ava and Felix. Felix is so arrogant. How could he go against Father? Ajax complained through clenched teeth. He's cocky because he believes he can turn your father into the Ansera. They have a rule that whoever kills a mortal will be severely punished, muttered Daphne. She was also displeased. Although Felix will be forced to stay in the world of immortals and can't keep in touch with Ava, she has Ezekiel's support. It won't be easy to kill her again, lamented Ajax, filled with irritation. Even though he barely knew Ava, he hated her, simply because she was the daughter of Aster's first wife. Besides, his family also wanted her to die, so he agreed to kill her. Ambrose interjected. Ava can easily injure me, which means she has already reached the yin-yang period. I just don't know whether she's in the primary or middle stage. Either way, it won't be easy for us to deal with her. I'm afraid we'll need Father and the other elders who are in the yin-yang period to kill her
replaced by shadows and the terrors that lurk within them. With our faith in the Divine One and the power He bestows on me, can we thrive in a corrupt world? Inquisitor, a word in private.
Sylvia asked at the same time. They had a feeling that it must be something surprising. normal that she already had a son. However, they were surprised to know that her son was also an immortal. Normally, it was rare for the child of a mortal and an immortal to inherit the talent of cultivation. Of course, it was still possible, so they could accept it. He's in the early stage of the yin-yang period, continued Felix in a low voice. His voice was so quiet that no one besides his parents would be able to hear him. Bodhi and Sylvia were shocked again. To their astonishment, Ava's son had reached the early stage of the yin-yang period at such a young age. It was incredible. Both Ava and her son were really amazing. Ava was already strong enough to defeat Aster on her own, but if her son helped her, they could easily control the whole Bulbous family. Her son is also Ezekiel's disciple, Sam. Well, that's a fake name. He also disguised himself with a false appearance when he appeared in the world of immortals, explained Felix. Bodhi and his wife continued to be shocked. They didn't expect Ezekiel's male disciple to be Ava's son. When he visited here last time, he was only at the peak of the golden core stage. After such a short time, he had already reached the early stage of the yin-yang period. It was very impressive. Ezekiel's female disciple is Ava's future daughter-in-law, but she also uses a fake name and a disguise to conceal her identity. It was actually thanks to her that Ava's son successfully found and met Ava, Felix informed them. He didn't tell them Henry or Ariana's name at this point, in order to protect them. Although he was having a private talk with his parents, whom he trusted, he thought it was better to keep it a secret before the news went public. Bodhi and Sylvia understood that, so they didn't ask for Ava's son's name. However, they were curious about how he happened to find and meet Ava. What do you mean? How did they meet each other? Asked Bodhi curiously. After Aster injured Ava, she was about to die. I rescued her and treated her until she made a full recovery, but she lost her memories after waking up. In order to help her live a good life, I let her live in a town near the foot of the Dower Mountain. I told her not to go back to Los Angeles so that her enemies wouldn't find her, said Felix. Bodhi blurted out, "What? You were the one who rescued Ava?" He and Sylvia didn't know that before. They thought that their son only knew that she was still alive. At the same time, they were also scared. Luckily, Aster didn't know that Felix had ruined his plans to kill Ava, or he would have been injured too. Yes, but I arrived there too late. If I had gotten there earlier, Ava's husband could have survived too, sighed Felix sadly. Even after all this time, he still blamed himself for failing to save her husband. Bodhi and his wife saw the sadness in Felix's eyes, but they also thought to themselves that he might have been killed by Aster if he had arrived earlier. It would be good if he had saved both Ava and Christopher, but it would be terrible if he failed and lost his own life. Felix continued. Last year, by chance, Ava's son and future daughter-in-law went to Dower Mountain. They passed through the town and met Ava. Later, Ava visited Los Angeles and met up with them again. After a series of events, she regained her memories, and they accepted each other as mother and son. Felix didn't know all of the details, so we could only give them a brief description of what happened. "Oh, I understand," Sylvia explained. It seems that Ava's future daughter-in-law had played an important part in reuniting Ava and her son, so she and Bodhi had a very good impression of her. Long story short, they have been cultivating and are in a good situation now. They'll come to the world of immortals very soon and take revenge at that time, Felix explained seriously. He was looking forward to seeing Ava and Henry in the world of immortals again. Will they kill the patriarch? Bodhi asked worriedly. Although Aster had made a terrible mistake and should be punished, he was Aster's brother after all, and he didn't have the heart to watch him die. I don't think they'll kill Aster, but because of the terrible things he has done, I believe Ava will disable him, said Felix. Upon thinking of what would happen to Aster, he felt no sympathy for him. Aster deserved it. Bodhi said nothing further, because he couldn't stop what would happen. Plus, although he hadn't suffered the same thing, he could understand Ava's hatred. In fact, Bodhi also wanted to ask Felix something else, but he decided against it. He wanted to know who would take over the Bulbous family if Ava really unseated Aster's family. She was now at the highest level, so she could surely be the new leader. Bodhi and Sylvia would support her if she wanted to be the new leader. After all, no one in the Bulbous family was more suitable than her. After that, they stopped talking about the topic and continued to eat. Astor considered sending people to eavesdrop on Felix's conversation with his parents. However, he quickly gave up the idea, because Felix was already at the peak of the Golden Core stage, so he would easily detect a nearby spy, unless the spy was in the yin-yang period. However, Astor wouldn't do it himself, and he couldn't ask the first or third elder to do it. Although he was the patriarch, the elders didn't need to obey his orders. They would only show up at important meetings. It would be a humiliation to them if they were sent to eavesdrop outside a door, and it would annoy them. At this key moment, the last thing Astor should do was annoy the elders. Therefore, he did nothing, even though he desperately wanted to know what Felix told his parents. After finishing dinner, Felix went back to his room to rest. Since he couldn't leave the world of immortals, he could only cultivate at home. The next day, Henry went back to the military base, Ariana went to work, and Ava went to her flower shop. Life returned to normal for a while, and several weeks passed with no incidents arising. Before long, it was February, and the city of Los Angeles held a special lantern festival. So Ariana returned to the Flores family's house to celebrate with them. Rita invited Selena's family and Gary's family to spend the day with them in Los Angeles. They were free, so they all flew over to visit. Rita didn't invite Oliver's family, because although she didn't hold a grudge against them anymore, she wasn't close with them. Rita had no idea that her mother had already woken up, because Ariana told other people not to tell her about it. Mrs. Young wasn't completely better. She could move her arms now, but not her legs, so she still had to sit in a wheelchair. She could also speak a little, though she could barely say a complete sentence, and was only able to finish a brief conversation. Because Mrs. Young was taken back to live with Oliver's family now, Oliver hired another nurse to take care of her. There were now 2 nurses at his house, because the first nurse he hired was taking care of his mentally ill wife. Although Lily was mentally ill, she normally stayed quiet. Only once in a while would she have an episode and cause trouble. So as long as they kept her in the house, everything would be fine. Although Mrs. Young wasn't completely well, she was as mean as always. She never stopped complaining, and she sometimes said cruel and unkind things about Rita and Ariana. Although Oliver had already told Mrs. Young that Ariana was the one who helped her wake up, she believed that Ariana had caused her to be disabled in the first place. Plus, she refused to believe that her granddaughter had the ability to help her recover. She strongly believed that she was blessed by a miracle, and that was why she could wake up. As a result, she hated Rita and Ariana just as much as she used to. Oliver was saddened that Mrs. Young didn't change at all, so he stopped talking to her about Rita and Ariana. He also felt embarrassed to let Ariana and the others know about it. It was extremely shameful. In the old days, Ron had a close relationship with Mrs. Young, because she always spoiled him. However, he was reluctant to be close to her any longer, because he realized how mean-spirited she was. His hostility towards Ariana had completely gone away. Now, he was very grateful to her, and even considered her his idol. Therefore, he began to hate Mrs. Young, since she wouldn't stop cursing Ariana. Nevertheless, Mrs. Young treated him well, so he said nothing, because he didn't want to seem ungrateful. Accordingly, he did his best to avoid her, so he didn't lose control of his emotions and argue with her. On the day of the Lantern Festival, Henry came back from the military base and visited the Ortiz family along with Ava. Ariana gave him a call at noon, and Henry complained that she was always away when they celebrated a holiday. Ariana reminded him that Valentine's Day was the day after tomorrow, so she would go back to be with him. If he didn't have a military task, they could spend the day together. Henry had almost forgotten about Valentine's Day until he got like it was Valentine's Day. On the evening of the Lantern Festival, Ariana had dinner with her family at the Flores family's house. Afterwards, the younger members of the family wanted to go out and have fun. So Ariana, Pascal, and Nino took Joanna, Yolanda, and Quinn to go see the lantern show at Balboa Park. Because Ariana was with them, their parents allowed them to go and weren't worried about their safety. Pascal and Nino also invited Megan and Matthew to join them. When Angie heard Megan talking to Pascal on the phone, she was excited and wanted to go with them, but she immediately remembered her mother's warning and felt upset. She realized that she better not be with them and could only watch Megan and Matthew leaving without her. Mrs. Lockwood felt sorry for her daughter, but she had to put an end to her daughter's abnormal feelings for Pascal, or it would cause serious trouble in the future. The Lockwood family chauffeur drove Megan and Matthew. Megan also called Tina and invited her to join, because it would be more fun if more friends joined them. During the Lantern Festival, Balboa Park was full of people and activity everywhere. There were vendors selling food and handicrafts, as well as many performers to watch. Ariana drove her cousins to the park in a large SUV, but they couldn't even park their car there because the parking lot was already full. As a result, they had to park several blocks away and then walk over. Ariana and the others arrived before Megan's group, so they waited for them outside the gate of Balboa Park. Otherwise, it would be hard for them to find each other in the crowd. In fact, it would still be difficult for them to stay together once they walked into the large crowd, and they could easily lose each other. Luckily, besides Joanna, Quinn, and Yolanda, the others had visited Balboa Park many times before. They were familiar with the paths and landmarks, so they weren't afraid of getting lost. About 10 minutes later, Megan and Matthew showed up with Tina. After they greeted each other, Ariana introduced them to one another before they went inside. Although they just had dinner, they couldn't help trying the special treats being sold by vendors along the pathways. At first, Joanna, Quinn, and Yolanda were very shy and didn't dare to say much. They were all very easygoing, but members of the Flores family enjoyed a high status compared with them. And since people of a high status sometimes seemed arrogant and not easy to get along with, they instinctively felt nervous in front of them. They felt that they were people from a different world, so they didn't dare to talk with them. After the members of the Flores family talked to Joanna and the others a lot, they gradually started to relax. After walking around for a while, Ariana's group saw an exciting spectacle of dancers when they reached one of the main squares, so they stopped to watch it. Ariana checked on Joanna and the others once in a while, in case they got lost in the crowd. However, when she looked back at them this time, she noticed two strange men. They were about 30 feet away, but she could still see that the two men could be criminals. They seemed very alert and panicked, which ordinary people might not notice, but Ariana could easily see it. The two men were staring at a boy, about 17 years old, who was not far away from them. It seemed that they were going to do something to him, and it was obvious it couldn't be anything good. The boy was standing by a muscular man who was about 30 years old, who looked like the boy's bodyguard. Both of them were totally engrossed in the performance, so they didn't know that they were being targeted. Ariana observed the situation, but did nothing except give them a glance once in a while. After watching the show for a few minutes, Ariana and her friends lost interest and left. Because there was a large crowd and the boy was with the bodyguard, Ariana thought that he would be fine. However, after Ariana and her friends walked around for half an hour, they saw the bodyguard again. But this time, he was alone, while the boy and the two strange men were nowhere to be seen. The bodyguard was talking on the phone and searching around anxiously. Obviously, he was looking for the boy. Ariana had a bad feeling that something must be wrong. She was unwilling to stand on the sidelines, so she told her friends to get some bubble tea in a nearby shop while she left for a little while. She told them that she just saw a familiar face and would be right back. Nina and the others were a little tired after walking around for so long, so they were happy to sit down and drink bubble tea. They turned to walk towards the shop, while Ariana left right away. She didn't go to see the boy's bodyguard, because it would only arouse suspicions if she intervened before she located the missing boy. Therefore, she directly used her jade eyes to look around strange men. They were 50 feet away from her, and there was a stand in front of them. It seemed as if they were selling handicrafts. However, there were only two of them, and the boy wasn't with them. They had stared suspiciously at the boy earlier, and now they were casually selling handicrafts here. Ariana believed that the boy's disappearance must have something to do with them, but where did the boy go? Without delay, she walked towards the two men, deciding to look at their stand first. When she got closer, she saw that the men were sitting on a big box. Onlookers would probably assume the box contained more of those handicrafts, but Ariana guessed that the boy might be in it. Without delay, she used her jade eyes to see what was inside, and her suspicions were confirmed. The boy was really in there. Luckily, he wasn't dead, only unconscious. Although Ariana didn't know why the two strange men caught
Mauser sits down with Dr. Christoph Moore, founder and CEO at GeneTech Medical Engineering, to explore the evolution of brain-computer interfaces and the path forward to a mind-controlled future. Discover how GeneTech is unlocking new possibilities in neurorehabilitation. Visit mauser.com/empowering-innovation to listen to the full episode.
She knew that it was illegal. No matter what, she had to do something. Therefore, she stayed in front of the two men's stand for a while and pretended to look at the handicrafts. There was nothing she liked, so she walked away afterwards. She didn't go far and stopped after walking 30 feet. The two strange men were still in her sight. Because of the lantern show at Balboa Park, there were many policemen patrolling around. Ariana quickly found two of them who patrolled together and told them outright that she had just seen two men beat a boy unconscious and squeeze him into a box. Upon hearing that, the two policemen were shocked. One of them asked her, "Are you sure? You could be put in detention if you cry wolf." He asked that question, not because he didn't trust her words, but because it seemed like such an unlikely scenario to happen. "I'm sure," replied Ariana seriously. "Fine, lead the way, please," ordered the policeman. After that, Ariana guided them over to the men's stand. The two men remembered that Ariana had come to their stand earlier, and now she was back with two policemen. Because they were guilty, they panicked at once. However, they couldn't run away, or they would look suspicious. Besides, they didn't think that it had something to do with the boy. They had hoped that perhaps they could get away with it. When the two policemen approached the stand, they attracted a lot of attention. Some people even wanted to watch them while unfold. Since Ariana had already reported the situation to them, the policemen didn't bother to ask questions. Instead, one of them said outright, "Someone reported something to us just now. You are suspected of beating a boy unconscious and squeezing him into that box. Please open the box and let us have a look." Upon hearing that, the two men panicked again. How did the police know that? Someone reported it to them? Who? This girl? Immediately they denied it. Who told you that? It's nonsense. We didn't do that, one of them exclaimed. "Right, we're innocent," added the other. Onlookers turned to glare at the two men, because it seemed like these men might be human traffickers, which was a terrible crime. Even though the two men denied that they had beaten a boy unconscious before squeezing him into the box, onlookers refused to believe it. Before the police could say anything else, an onlooker cried out, "Open the box and we'll know the truth." "Right, open the box and we'll see for ourselves," someone else shouted. "Open it, open it," all the onlookers chanted, but they weren't trying to make a scene. They simply had a strong sense of justice and wanted to make sure that the two men hadn't kidnapped anyone. By this point, the two men understood that their secret would be exposed, and it was too late to deny it now. Therefore, they made up their mind to run away. The next moment, they exchanged a glance and reached a tacit agreement. Then they immediately turned around and ran. Although there were many onlookers, the men hoped they could escape into the crowd and blend in. Unfortunately, they were doomed to fail. Once they ran, some of the onlookers rushed forward to stop them, and the two policemen caught them separately. Although the two men were strong and struggled at once, they couldn't get free. The box wasn't open yet, but the fact that they tried to run away proved that they were guilty. If they were innocent, they would have listened to the police and opened the box. When the two policemen went to catch the men, Ariana immediately walked over to boy in the box was still okay. As soon as Ariana opened the box, everyone could see there was indeed a boy inside. At that point, the public got even angrier. How could the two men treat a boy so badly? Is he alright? Asked someone. Yes, he just passed out, answered Ariana. Then she gently shook the boy's shoulder. That was just a cover, of course, and she really put magical power into the boy's body. After about 10 seconds, he gradually woke up, and the onlookers collectively breathed out a sigh of relief. It was a good thing that the boy was alright. However, he wasn't fully conscious yet, so we didn't know what had happened. Meanwhile, the two policemen had completely controlled the two men. They were now handcuffed and kneeling on the ground, surrounded by several onlookers. After that, one of the policemen walked over to ask about the boy's condition. How are you? Are you alright? He questioned with concern. He's fine. He just woke up, so he isn't fully conscious, explained Ariana. Thank you so much, miss. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't have known that such a terrible thing happened, the policeman said gratefully. When onlookers heard that Ariana went to the police for help, they immediately complimented her as well. Facing the compliments, Ariana modestly responded, You're welcome. I think no matter who saw it, they would do the same. There are a lot of bad people in this world, but there are also a lot of good people. After doing so many good deeds, Ariana didn't feel pride for doing them anymore. Instead, she felt it was just a little favor. At this time, the boy finally came back to his senses and realized what had happened. In horror, he abruptly stood up from the ground. Even though he understood that he was safe now, he was still scared, especially when he remembered that someone tightly covered his nose the moment he walked out of the restroom earlier. He could barely breathe back then. He thought that he was going to die and was filled with horror. Afterwards, he lost consciousness, and he found himself here when he opened his eyes again.